Welcome to the Peak of Possibility podcast, brought to you by Peak Path Health. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Remember, if you or someone you care about is facing challenges, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to support you on your journey to health and wellness. Welcome to the show. My name is Glynis Franz. This is the Peak of Possibility podcast, and today we have Eric Strong, who is running for LA County Sheriff this year. He has been in law enforcement for 32 years. He's a Los Angeles native, and I'm really excited to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Glynis. I'm excited to be here.
Looking
forward to it.
Made the trek. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think it's a little bit, I don't know, what's the best way to put it? Atypical, right? For someone running for a political position like LA County Sheriff to be having conversations so openly about addiction, homelessness, mental health in a real, genuine way. It's,
right.
You see people on TV talking about it and all of these agendas that they have. But I mean, being a person who is both in recovery, works in the behavioral health field, and has been living in Los Angeles for a long time, it's hard, I think, for the public to see any true change happening.
Yeah. Well, I like to be considered atypical. I'm not your norm.
Yeah, I mean, how we met, it was pretty abnormal. I was telling you, I was at a behavioral health conference that happens every year, and you were there meeting with a bunch of professionals in the treatment space every hour. I mean, for what, 2-3 days, you're meeting 5, 6, 7, 8 people at a time and having a conversation about some of the issues that we see.
Well, I know there's a lot of change that's got to come. And I know that the only way we're going to get there is to bring in the experts, those people with the expertise, the education, the experience, to make them. If you want to be successful as a leader, you got to bring in people that are smarter than you and surround yourself with them. So
I agree.
That's why I'm always asking the questions. I don't want to just be always the one speaking. I want to know and I want to learn. And, we have to build these coalitions. As they say, it takes a village.
Yeah. So for people who don't know you, how would you describe who you are, what you do, kind of what drives you?
Oh, wow.
Sorry, I surprised you.
Yeah, you got me with that. It's deep. It really is. I think I want to be seen as just a person, first of all. I don't want to be seen as an official. I don't want to be seen as a police officer, an executive. And I've always tried to do that even in-house, working. And I'm saying that, I'm going to give you just a real quick example. In law enforcement, we all wear a name tag, and it's got our last name on it. And so what you'll find is the people that you work with every day, sit in a car with every day, go to briefing with every day, everybody calls each other by their last name. And I want to know the person's first name. Like, who are you? And so it's interesting you say that, because I'm always curious of the people I work with, like, who are you? You have kids, you have a family. There's so much more to a person than just what we do. So I think I'm just a person that wants to see some good things. I had a good upbringing with my parents. They taught me values and character. I'm a father. I'm a husband.
How many kids do you have?
3.
Wow.
And they're not kids. They're all adults. The youngest one is 25. So I have 2 boys and a girl. 2 boys on the bookends, and my daughter's in the middle. They're 28, 26, and 25. I'm somebody that wants to make them proud. I want them to be able to look up to their dad and say, hey, he's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
I was born and raised here in L.A.
Where in L.A.?
All over. For a period of time, we stayed down in Carson, Harbor City area, San Pedro. My parents divorced, and my dad moved over here to the L.A. side, kind of Culver City area, but he had a business right over here on Crenshaw and Venice. So every weekend, growing up, this is where I was here, not far from where we are right now.
Yeah, downtown LA.
Yeah. Johnny's Pastrami's down the street was one of my favorite places.
It used to be open till 2-3 in the morning now, and now they close at still the best, but the sandwiches are like $30 each.
Yeah, exactly. We used to go there when they were like, $6.95 or something like that, But yeah, I'm just right here in kind of like the heart of LA is kind of my home. I went to UCLA after high school.
What did you go to school for?
Well, I went for sociology, and interesting enough is I thought I wanted to be an attorney. All through high school, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And somewhere along the line, while I was in school, I got a job at this law firm, and it was like a corporate law firm. And I was like, oh, I can't do this. I mean, I would see the junior attorneys, the associate attorneys, they'd be in those legal libraries, those law libraries for like 7, 8, 10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, oh, this would drive me crazy. So my dad was a police officer.
Oh,
And
wow.
of course, growing up as a kid, you don't want to be, you don't want to do the same thing.
You don't want to be like your dad.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Funny though, we end up being just like our parents, or sometimes the total opposite.
Right. But I pretty much kind of followed in his footsteps, and I said, you know what, let me go and get on with the law enforcement agency. I'll do it 5 to 7 years.
Which law
learn.
enforcement agency did you come up in, or
So I started with Compton Police Department.
Wow.
Yeah, back
That
in
must have been
the early 90s.
Early 90s. Very,
Yes.
yeah. That must
Challenging
have been
era.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what was that like? And why did you have a choice as to where you started, or did you just go where you were?
No, well, when you're applying for various municipal agencies,
Mm-hmm.
You apply for multiple agencies.
Right.
And Compton is actually where my dad worked.
Mm-hmm.
I was very familiar with the city. I had family there. My mom worked there, and to be
At
quite
the
honest with
agency
you,
as well?
yeah,
Your
she
mom?
worked in the courthouse.
Oh, wow.
She worked in the courthouse, yeah. And quite honestly, they were the first one that hired me.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also the one that I wanted. So I was applying actually for Compton, Pasadena, and LAPD.
Mm-hmm.
And so Compton was trying to hire for a July academy, as was Pasadena. And I remember my background investigator calling me one day. He says, hey, I need you to be honest with me. If we hire you today and Pasadena hires you today, who would you go with? And I said, well, he says, he says, it's not going to hurt you. Just tell us the truth. I said, well, probably Pasadena, right?
Right. Makes sense.
Right. And the reality of it at that time at 22, 23 years old, they pay more.
Right.
Right. And so that was like on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
The following Monday, they called me and they said, hey, I need you to come down to the department right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. And they said, well, we're going to hire you, but we want you to start the class in April. And it was April. So I literally had 7 days notice
Right.
to start the academy.
Oh my gosh.
But I loved it. I mean, my dearest friends, family, whatever you want to,
We had
we're
roots
family.
there.
I did.
Did you ever live in Compton?
I didn't.
Yeah.
No. But
you
my
had family there.
family did. I think they lived there before I was born, and then they
Right.
moved to Carson.
Yeah.
So I obviously knew a lot of people on the department, had a lot of kind of uncles on the department already.
Right. Had a little clout walking in, which was nice.
No. We're not. I didn't have any clout.
Yeah.
I did have some people looking out for me.
Right.
Make sure I didn't get
jammed up.
But it was great. It was wonderful. It was challenging.
What was challenging about it?
Just the era.
Yeah. There's especially then, Rodney King, all of this stuff going on, right?
Yes.
With the African American community and police specifically. I mean,
Yes.
was there any fear going into it, or were you excited? I mean, I know at 23 years old, you're we're kind of fearless, right?
I think I was too young to be afraid, but yes, you're silly if you don't have a fear, a respectful fear of the job and what you're doing and being there. I can tell you this, and this is not a pat on the back, but this is not a badge of honor of any way, shape, or form. But like 4 months in, I got into a hellacious shootout with a guy with an AK-47.
Oh my God.
And he sprayed basically a neighborhood with about 20, 30 rounds.
Wow.
And fortunately, I'm still here. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that was my kind of introduction.
Right. That was your introduction to
right
being a
away.
police officer at 23 years old. What was the effect of that experience on you? Did you have any awareness of some of the fallout? I mean, that was your first experience, and if I had to guess you probably had other experiences very similar after that, right?
Yes.
But that first experience at 23 years old, how did that feel? Was there any, post-traumatic stress disorder? Was there anxiety? Was it, I got through this? Because it kind of is a little bit like a badge of honor when you're, in the police force. Maybe you weren't seeing it that way, but
Right.
it is in a way, right?
Yeah, and I will just say this: that was like my first shooting. I mean, the like I said, I was 4 months in, so the 3 to 4 months before that were very, very busy. Like I said, just a challenging era with gangs. That's when the crack epidemic was really strong and big.
Specifically in that area,
specifically
African
in that
American
area.
areas.
Yes.
I mean, it really took out communities, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you see a lot, you experience a lot in a very short period of time. I want to say this. Back then, I wouldn't have known. You were just so busy, you just kept going.
Yeah.
I do remember in my 20s, early 30s, I used to have a lot of weird dreams. You know what I mean? That would like wake me up at night. Didn't know what it was. I mean, and this was before, PTSD was really a thing that they talked about.
Right.
But I'm going to go back. So before I joined the police department, I was also in the Marine Corps. So I want to say that one of the best things that I didn't realize I had at the time was a support group.
Right.
That I didn't even know. I could call my dad. Like when I had that shooting, in the middle of the night, I want to say I called at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
My parents. And, I remember my mom answering the phone. I'm like, hey, I need to talk to my dad, And so he gets on the phone and I could tell him about it.
Right.
And he was able to hear it, having experienced similar things.
Right.
And give me good direction and give me advice. And, I
what
had
was
people.
his advice? Do you remember?
First it was, are you okay?
Right.
You know.
And were you?
I think I was, yeah. Adrenaline,
Yeah.
Adrenaline's going. And then, the next thing that happens after something like that is you have to be interviewed.
Right.
And
Internal affairs.
internal affairs, shooting, homicide, everybody comes in.
A debrief, they
A
call it,
debrief,
right?
yeah. And he said, hey, just tell the truth.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's what I did. So I think even more interesting than that, going where you're going, is several years later, I was working gangs. And I had the opportunity to work with a DA, and the DA was able to give us some information. And what she was able to tell me based on a data tracking system that they had was, how many reports had I authored for a homicide, right? And I was just curious, like how many had I, and
Had
so
you written?
Right. So she couldn't tell me how many homicide scenes I had been at, but she could say, I can tell you how many reports, how many times you wrote a report at a shooting scene.
Wow.
And I remember at that time, it was like 1998, and she gave me, it was 357.
And how many years had you been on the force at this point?
Probably 5, close to 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So,
insane.
Isn't it?
So
Isn't it?
5 years, I mean, how many is that a year? Like 7? I mean, that's
Yeah.
insane. And so that doesn't necessarily mean you'd been, the first on scene to all of those
Correct.
calls, but you'd had some kind of involvement to the point where you're writing a report
Yes.
in 350 homicides.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what I realized is that that's 350 dead bodies.
Right.
Or shooting victims. But
Or
that
maybe
didn't
even
include,
more.
but yes, because that didn't include the times that I responded and said, hey, to the handling officer, do you need anything? Like, no, Eric, we're good, we got it.
Right.
That didn't include the fatal traffic incidents. That didn't include the suicides. That didn't include the natural deaths
Those are
that
just
we had.
homicides, right?
Yeah,
So much
just
exposure
homicides, yeah.
to loss of life and death. It's not a normal experience to have as a Marine, as a police
I'm like, I'm not a
officer.
pathologist. I'm not a coroner. I'm not, a mortician.
How did that impact you when you had that number in your head? Was there any insight into that experience, I guess?
Yeah, I remember thinking at that time that I wasn't even 30 yet. I said, nobody should have to see that many dead bodies. There's something wrong with that.
Right.
You know, so I really kind of started, I think I really kind of started thinking along those lines in different avenues. How can you be impactful? How can I change? What can I do?
Did you go in with that that goal when you went into the force, or was it just like, oh, this is a job, this is what my family does? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but I'm just curious.
No, I can't say that I did. I went into that profession with a goal to do as much as I could, be as much as I can, go as high as I can, you know,
make
learn
as much money as I could,
well,
right?
You know,
the normal stuff that somebody in
and
their 20s
you know,
does.
when you're becoming a police officer, you're not really thinking about making a lot
Not
of
getting
money.
rich, but you have
Yeah.
a pension, you have a time frame
Wasn't
in
even
which
thinking
you have
about
to
that
do
back
it.
then.
Yeah.
You know, it was just, this is what I want to do, and I want to have a positive impact on society.
Right.
It's kind of the textbook,
Very
you know,
altruistic.
yeah, kind of the textbook answer, but it was real. So,
Did you feel like you were making an impact in those early years?
I thought I was.
Yeah.
I thought I was, but you know,
In what way? Like, do you have any examples specifically that you can pull from where you're like, okay, this had a positive impact on one person or one group of people when you were just on the street, as a rookie cop?
Yeah, I want to say that again. You know, as we age, we get older, we evolve. You know, we have these paradigm shifts and these epiphanies, and the things that I thought I was making an impact on, some of them were, I see now, the propaganda of the war on drugs.
Right.
Were we really making an impact?
On the crack epidemic? No.
No, we really weren't. And
We were trying to arrest our way through it, right?
Thank you. We were trying to arrest our way out of it. And we were only making these arrests and locking away people from the Black community.
Right.
From the Latino community.
Primarily.
Because
yes.
if you went to Hollywood or Malibu and they got caught with cocaine, they weren't getting 20 years.
No.
And let's just be real.
No, it's
right?
true.
So I really thought that this war on gangs, this war on drugs was the way to go. And then, of course, now I realize.
When did that shift for you? Like, when did you have the aha moment where you're like, okay, I'm arresting these gang members, these drug addicts, primarily living below the poverty line in Compton, oftentimes brown people, right? And you really do believe that you're doing the right thing by arresting these people and locking them up, right? But when do you have a moment when you're like, what am I doing? This isn't working. This isn't an effective solution.
For me, it came much later. It came from me learning and gaining an understanding of the way legislation creates these laws intentionally. And it came from me just getting more educated in kind of civic stuff and understanding what motivates certain laws and what motivates the prison industry.
Private prison.
Yes. Right. So maybe it took a little bit longer for me to learn, but I will say this, that even then, I do know and I remember, because I played sports a lot, and I always appreciated coaches. And so I just remember speaking to the youth, talking to them. And one of the things that my parents always taught me is, listen, what you need to be successful in this job, we taught you, you learned in kindergarten. Treat people with respect, treat them with dignity. My dad gave me 3 rules. He says, listen, when the handcuffs are on, the fight is over.
Right.
There is no extra lick. There is no I'm mad or whatever. He says, that's it.
Right.
And so I always lived by that. And so I always treated people with respect, and some really good, strong memories that I have. And sometimes I feel like they were too late, were kids, and I'm talking about 13 to 16 years old, unfortunately being involved in something very, very serious, oftentimes murders.
Right.
Saying, I only want to talk to Strong.
Wow.
I will talk to him, but I won't talk to anyone else.
Why do you think that is?
Did
you feel safe to them, maybe? Relatable? Human?
I think, there you go. I like all of those.
Right?
Safe, relatable, but I know that the contacts that I had with them, I treated them
like human beings.
like human beings.
Right. I mean, I've been on the other side of the law myself.
Right.
And I remember that there was experiences before I got sober where I was arrested and put in jail many times, to be honest. And in those experiences, there were times where I was treated less than human, bottom of the barrel, drug addict, liar, and I was those things.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was times where I was treated like a human being, and the experience was different, right? Yeah. And the way I reacted was different.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I can say with them is that I always kept my word.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see, when you work in a small city like Compton, you're constantly seeing the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And I would see them walking home from school, and I would stop. Hey, how was school today? How did you do?
Right.
What's going on? Anything happening? Even though they were the local gang members,
right?
You just stop and you have a conversation. But to what you were saying in terms of being treated poorly, working in custody, working in courts, working in the streets, what I found out is this. The majority of the people that go through the criminal justice system
mm-hmm.
are not mad that they got arrested.
Right.
Are not mad that they got stopped. They're not even mad that they're in jail. They know who they are.
Yeah.
They're mad because they're dehumanized. They are upset because they're being disrespected.
Typically, yes.
Yes, that's
especially for the
that's
ones that
when
are
they
going
get upset.
in and out. You have the
Yes.
the outliers of the person who's never had that experience and got involved with something. But for
Right.
sure, I think at least pulling from my own experiences of finding myself incarcerated and in and out
Mm-hmm.
of jails, I was in acceptance. I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging to be let out. I'm like, well, the jig is up. It is what it is. I knew what I was getting myself into, right? But yeah, oftentimes it is that, like, why is he talking to me like that? Why is he treating me like that?
Right.
And it really is that.
You don't need to be demeaned.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be degraded.
Right.
You don't need to be treated less than.
Well, there is a power dynamic, of course. I mean, police officer arresting you, your freedom is gone, and they have the ability to do that. Of course, there's decisions made that usually lead someone to being in that situation most of the time. But there is that power dynamic, I think, and similar to what you said, your dad said, once they're in cuffs, the fight's over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. And that is not just dealing with a physical altercation. It's dealing with just common decency and respect for a human being. And if I could tell you just this one story.
Yeah.
I was in, it used to be called the Price Club. I'll tell you how long ago this was, right? Price Club, if you remember that. You remember the Price Club?
I don't. I grew up in Massachusetts, so I've only been here for like 8 or 9 years.
So it's Costco now.
Oh, okay.
Costco used to be the Price Club.
Yeah.
Right. So I was at the one here in Inglewood, and my son, who's 28 now, he was sitting in the front of the cart, so he was just a toddler. And I'm walking out, and this guy stops me, and he says, "Hey, you're a cop."
Well, you have the look.
Right. I probably did. I probably had some, Oakley glasses on or something.
Right.
But he tells me, he says, "Hey, you're a cop." And I'm like, and I just looked at him like, "Can I help you?" And he says, "Hey, is your name Strong?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I like, "How can I help you?" He says, "You don't remember me?" I said, "No." He says, "You took me to jail one day." And so now I'm like, this is what they always tell you about.
Right.
Like, you got to be around because the people you take to jail are going to remember you far sooner or faster than you remember them.
Which is what causes the hypervigilance, right?
Yes, absolutely. And he says, "You took me to jail one day." And this is what he says to me. I won't cuss on here, but he says,
It's okay, you can cuss.
He says, "You beat my ass."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, shoot." Right. And I'm like, okay, so now I'm taking the card. I'm trying to get my son behind me.
Right.
I'm afraid that this guy, and, I think he sees my positioning and posturing.
Yeah.
And he says, whoa, hold on. He says, I didn't say that right. He says, wait. He says, "No, I remember you." He says, "I've been in trouble with the law my whole life." He says, "That day, I was wrong. It had been involved in a shooting or something." He says, "I ran. I fought with you. You handled your business." He says, "But the one thing I'll tell you that never happened before is that when you put the handcuffs on, he said, you picked me up," and he says, "I remember you were like dusting my pants off." And you asked me, it's like, why did we have to do that? And He says, he said, I was scraped up a little bit. He says, you got some water and a napkin and you kind of,
cleaned him
up a little bit. He says, that's never happened before.
Right.
And so my point is that people can remember the negative experiences, but they will remember the good ones too.
100%.
And it leaves a lasting impression. And that to me was that signal, that sign, like, we can do our job. Listen, there's evil in the world since Cain and Abel. You know what I mean? There's been evil in the world. And, we have law enforcement, good or bad, whether you like them or don't like them. They're there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be disrespectful to people. That is just my biggest thing. And that's one of the things that's bothered me the most in my career is when I would see an unnecessary, just demeaning, disrespectful behavior from my brothers and sisters in uniform.
Right.
Yeah. And not to mention it's happened to me.
Right. Right.
Growing up here in LA.
I was going to say, you told me that you have, family who has been on the opposite end of the law, right? Struggled with alcoholism, mental health, going in and out of jail. How did that shape or inform any of your approaches to working in this field? And did it give you a level of compassion, or did working as a law enforcement officer get you a place where you almost became, I don't know, numb to it all?
Yeah, I have to be honest. Let me also say this. I had my own experiences with law enforcement, being profiled by, LAPD or Culver City. I'm just being real, I've had negative
reality,
experiences. Right? Yes.
Wow. What kind of experiences have you had? Sorry to.
Oh, well, so I said my dad owned a business not far from here, right? And I remember driving his car, which was a nice car, back in the 80s, right? And, I remember driving and getting ready to make a left turn. I make a left turn I had gone to get some food. And LAPD, because I was going this way, they were this way. And the reality of it is there's a young black kid in a nice car.
Right.
Doesn't belong there.
In a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right.
And it wasn't that rough of a neighborhood, but I was just in their area. And so I got pulled over, got pulled out of the car, slammed against the back of the car, searched the car, roughly, patted down. And I'm like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And so, and keep in mind, when I said my dad, I told you my parents got divorced. So it's my stepdad that was a police officer. So I'm like, my dad's a cop.
Right.
And so I was pissed. I was upset.
For no reason.
Yeah, for no reason.
That's crazy. I mean, I've been searched and pulled out of my car, but it was always for a reason. I have never, ever in my life been pulled over randomly and just searched.
Oh, it's, I can.
Like above the law, sober, doing the right thing. Never.
I remember we have different experiences.
Right. No, I mean,
but I remember,
that's what I'm saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember being in law enforcement and, driving down the street in Culver City and I'm at a red light and I got a left turn arrow and I get the left turn green. I mean, there's not much you can do wrong. I mean, it's not like I'm turning on a solid green where I might have turned in front of somebody. I have a green arrow.
Right.
So I turn, and waiting in the intersection going this way is Culver City PD.
Right.
I make my turn, and they turn behind me. And I'm like, here we go. I'm a cop. I said, here we go. And sure enough, they pull me over. Hey, license and registration. I said, for what? I said, before I give you anything, I said, let me tell you, I have a gun in the car. I'm an off-duty police officer. Oh, okay. Can I see your ID? Sure. I give him my ID. And so they're, okay, well, thanks. I said, hold on. Why'd you pull me over? Oh, don't worry about it, man. Have a good day. All right, bro. We're good, bro. Yeah. And I'm like, bro.
All of a sudden, you're the bro, right?
Right. So I know about profiling. I know about profiling. I've been the victim at times and had law enforcement contact me.
Have you ever found yourself being the perpetrator?
What do you mean?
Like, have you ever profiled as a young police officer just because of what you're being taught?
Oh, the perpetrator of profiling.
Yeah.
I could say, I can honestly say yes.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in a culture and you're taught certain things and this is what you look for and it's ingrained into the system.
And it's the way you're taught. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I will honestly say, yes, I have.
I appreciate
like
your
you
honesty.
said. Yeah. That's what we're here for. You know what I mean? The reality of it is we can't learn from our mistakes unless we know that they're mistakes.
Right.
And so, yeah, no, I have. And you have to, again, it's what you learn as you evolve.
Right, and
it's what you
acknowledging
learn.
where we fall short, and I think that's true individually, or for a person like you who has this opportunity to have some true influence in Los Angeles County, right? Mm-hmm. Recognizing individually where we've fallen short, and as a system, as a city, as a county, as what is working and what is not working, because it's pretty clear that things are not working, right?
Right. They are not working, and I think we were talking about earlier, we've tried to arrest our way out of all of our problems. And that's not the solution.
No.
And if you really look at, the US, that's what they do.
Right.
There's a problem, we're going to put it on a statute, we're going to make it a crime, and we're going to arrest our way out of it. There's always this kind of consequence.
Or there's one extreme to the other, then you'll see certain cities and areas totally, everything's legal, open drug market. And I think that there has to be some kind of like neutral middle ground or some solution where we can find a path that's effective, right?
Yes.
There has to be. I mean, I'm a very optimistic, glass half full type person.
Okay.
I'm also very much like a realist as well.
Yes.
And so I do believe that there is a way that we can make an impact in the United States and the state of California, and obviously specifically with you in Los Angeles County. What that looks like is where I'm like, how are we going to figure this out? Because you got to get a lot of people on board, right?
Yes.
And and that's hard to do in a very bureaucratic system where it's very political and a lot of red tape, right? Getting things done.
Right. I think the biggest thing is here, what I've learned is if you want to do it, you can do it. And in law enforcement, we typically don't see change because change is needed. We see change because there's been so much outcry, so much backlash. Yep. We have to change it. You know what I mean? Just to kind of quell the noise and to kind of, tamp things down a little bit, or
okay, we're doing it. Just calm down, right?
Or the change is forced by legislation. Not very often is law enforcement the one that's coming up with the ideas and leading the change, especially when we start talking about kind of care first systems, care first diversions, especially when we're talking about anything other than take them to jail.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's.
And that's not to say that there aren't some.
It's in place, right? It's hard to break a culture, a belief system, an ideology that's been in place, for well over just the last, 3
centuries.
Centuries, exactly. I just want to go back real quick. I'd asked you about your family and how that kind of informed some of your perspectives on things.
So I will say this again, young, immature, I thought for a period of time that the answer was that they needed to go to jail. Interesting enough, I remember a call where somebody called me and said, hey, in Compton, we're over here on such and such street, and we have your cousin. And I remember saying, take her to jail.
Right.
Because my family had been dealing with her addiction and the things that went along with it for a very long time. And I thought that the answer was
to put her in jail.
Take her to jail.
Yeah, teach her a lesson, right?
Teach her a lesson, and then there is the reality, because we would see it, people that you knew that were the local regulars, alcoholics, or, the crack addicts. And, when you would take them to jail, if they went and did 3 or 4 months, they came back, healthier. And, you know what I mean?
100%.
They put on weight and, they look good.
Because they had a little separation from their drugs and alcohol, which is valuable. And honestly, for me, personally speaking, I don't mean to cut you off, I would not be sober today if I wasn't incarcerated for a little while. That's what led to me getting sober. Truly. I needed to be forced to stop using the substances I was using because I wasn't going to do it on my own. But the difference is when I left, I started doing some real work to make it sustainable and long term.
Yeah.
And I got treatment, and I went and I got active in a sober community, and I started to do some internal work, and I got connected to God and spirituality, and I started to do what works for me. And there's different paths to that for all kinds of people, but I don't think I would have done that on my own.
And the people that I speak to in the recovery industry, that's a very common thread. It's a very common theme, that there needs to be accountability. And oftentimes incarceration is a good thing. Where incarceration is not necessarily a good thing is that when you're incarcerated for that 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever it is,
and they're let right back out to the streets.
Let right back out to the very environment, the very neighborhood, the very people. You know what I mean?
Right.
That
Same people,
that fueled,
places, things. Right.
Right. And so it oftentimes didn't take long. And so proud of my family now that, they are sober, they are clean and doing well.
Your cousin.
My cousin, yeah.
Wow.
And, to be able to see her at these, the picnics and whatever it is, the weddings, the funerals, regularly.
Right.
It used to be, we might see her.
And then she disappears.
And then you may not see her again for 3 or 4 years. And like I said, these are my first cousins, that I grew up with. So it took a while for me to realize that, what the system was doing was broken. It wasn't working.
What ended up working for her? I don't know if you want to speak too deeply about her, but
that's a good question.
Yeah. Was she incarcerated?
Oh yeah, she had been in and out of jail.
The last time that she ended up getting sober.
I want to say yes.
Yeah.
I want to say yes.
Should you 12-step maybe?
And I don't know because I never asked her. And I really didn't. And maybe I should.
Right.
I was just happy to see her. And I'm not even being funny, but the family says, "Oh, she's here. Will she be at the next one?
Right.
Will she be at the next one?" And then she's there. And then she's there. And then she's there.
That's how you know that somebody's doing well, is they're consistent.
Yes. And so I think we're just so kind of happy.
Grateful, yeah.
And
you're like, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Yes, you look great. You know what I mean? Good to see you, know. But yeah, sometimes, family, you don't necessarily ask like, okay, so what was it?
Yeah.
And maybe I should.
Yeah.
Maybe I should. But I do know that it wasn't just arresting and, the constant back and forth, in and out of the system.
That worked, right? Because if that was the solution, similar to me, speaking from my own experience, I would have got sober a long time ago.
Yeah.
Because I was in and out. Yeah. And it's so full circle to be sitting here with you on the other end of it. And I mean, it's pretty powerful. And we're talking primarily right now about like substance use, but there's people, especially in LA County, who are on the streets. Maybe they're using substances, maybe they're not, but they're experiencing severe mental illness.
Yes.
Right? Autism, spectrum disorder, dementia.
Yes.
Right? Schizophrenia. People that are maybe born with something that is completely out of their control.
Yep.
And they find themselves homeless on the streets. Not all of us are so lucky to have family or loved ones who can support us through these kinds of things. And you see a lot of those people, on the streets, going in and out of institutions, jails, or 72-hour holds, which I don't know if you know much about, thought disorders or schizophrenia, but 3 days of medication is not enough to stabilize a person.
Right.
Sometimes it takes months.
And most of the time, they're not even in there the full 72 hours.
Correct. Yeah. So how are we currently handling it? I have an idea, but I want to hear what you think about it. And what is the solution?
I will say this. Here's how we're trying to handle it all in-house. I will say this. We've gotten better since the early 90s when I started. There's far more attention on it. But the resources just aren't there.
The financial resources.
Financial, personnel. I remember. So DCFS, Department of Children and Family Services, was a big thing back in the 90s, and I remember they had a hotline. And if we came across any kind of incident, dealing with children, we could call them that hotline at 8, 9, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and somebody would pick up, and then they would say, okay, they take the circumstances, and they said, okay, somebody will be there, and they'll call you back. Somebody will be there in 30 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on where they're coming from.
Wow.
And I remember that's what would happen.
Right.
And as time went on, okay, somebody will be there in 45 minutes to an hour. And like an hour and a half later, you're calling back and saying, hey, did they get lost? Are we still,
Right.
are they still coming? Hang on. So you're calling a hotline. You're not calling, and, oh, they'll be there in 45 minutes. Well, you said that an hour and a half ago.
Right.
And so then they show up. And what ended up happening is those response times got longer and longer until they finally just said, hey, we're not going to be there till 8 in the morning.
Right.
Similar
and so, to pet teams. Like I've had to call the pet team. Oh man, it could be 2 days later.
That's my point. So it's a resource issue. And, number one is if the more instances that you have that fall within that criteria and you keep still calling the same people and they're getting up 2, 3, 4 times a night or even a week, that wears on you. So the point is this: we don't have the resources and we don't properly manage them, because people ask me, well, why does law enforcement respond?
Right.
Well, you tell me who else you're going to call at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
Right.
Well,
those mental evaluation teams
allocated towards that.
There's resources allocated, but they typically get off at 5 o'clock. And somebody that's in a mental health crisis at 1 a.m., you can't tell them, hey, I need you to put that on hold till 8 o'clock.
Oh, no.
Till they come back on shift, which kind of gets into some of the ideas and some of the things that I want to do. And then now you look in our jail system. The LA County jail system has the largest mental health hospital in our country. Like, why? Something's wrong with that. So now, yes.
You're talking about the actual jail it's the largest psychiatric hospital in LA County.
Yes. No,
right?
in the country.
In the country.
In the
How
country.
many people are in that? We're talking about Men's Central?
Twin Towers.
Twin Towers.
We average right now probably around between 13,000, 14,000 people a day. But a very large percentage of them are dealing with mental health issues.
Right.
And so, of course, we have our own DMH, or Department of Mental Health, internally, right? But they can't keep up with it. And then what we do is we try to give them the services that they need. We try to give them what they need while they're in there. But there's also a court system that's dictating how long people are in, what happens to them when they leave. It's great if we can have them in there for 90 days and they're getting consistent, care and treatment, but they're not.
They're not.
Because they're in line with everybody else, and there's people that are acute, and our resources just aren't there to give them what we need. So that's where we're falling short. We really are. Whereas what we need is we need concentrated resources. We need to tap into programs, organizations, homes, facilities outside of our normal thing. Yeah. Because then it goes back to what we just talked about before with, substance abuse. Okay, you get out and you go right back to your neighborhood.
Right.
So if you're in mental health crisis and I give you 15, 30 days worth of medication and a pamphlet that says, hey, go here.
Right.
And then you go home 3 months later, 4 months later, you go right back to the same environment. Your family's calling us again.
If you have a home. There's 72,000 is what I looked up. 72,000, documented homeless people in Los Angeles County right now.
Right. Wherever it is that you consider
45,000 of them are here in the city of LA.
Yeah.
And 40% of those people are experiencing, severe mental health and substance use disorders. And that's just, the numbers that we have. If I had to guess, it was probably more than that.
Right.
But.
And you're sent out to manage your own crises.
Right.
Right? And how long does that last?
I mean, it doesn't last. Managing their own crises looks like them homeless on the street.
Yeah, that's
using drugs or, not being able to care for themselves because they're, in active psychosis or whatever that means, which is like, okay, then at a certain point they end up doing something crazy. Like, how many times do you see man with machete on the Citizens app on the corner? Like,
right.
I mean, really, it's a reoccurring thing. I say it as a joke, but it's real. It's people aren't just putting that there's a man with machete on a corner. There's people, who are in such severe, states. And what ends up happening is, the police come. Pet team probably not, because they're so inundated. The pet team is like the crisis response team in LA County, for those that don't know. Police come, arrest, maybe put them on a 72-hour hold, and then they're back out. And it's just like, it's this like cycle that just doesn't seem to be working and never has worked. And then you get into the nonprofit space, and it's like, we're spending billions of dollars in LA County money to support the homeless system. And most of that money is going to the nonprofits, but we're just not seeing the result in the streets.
So let's talk about the man with the machete.
Right.
And let's talk about what law enforcement, because with a man in a machete, who are they going to call?
Right.
Right? They're going to call 911. And here's what we see, and I'll give you the example, of things that I've been involved in. You have a naked man in the street playing dodgeball at the intersection of Adams and Normandy.
Right.
With cars.
Right.
So we get that call over the radio. We get there naked, penal code violation.
Right.
Right? Well, penal code violation.
Right.
Obstructing traffic, vehicle code violation. Maybe he's got a stick or a machete or a golf club. He's hitting cars. Vandalism, or now we give him commands and he fails to follow them. Penal code violation.
Right.
And maybe we get into a use of force and then we charge him with assault on a peace officer. Penal code violation.
Right.
So only responses we really have are how do we deal with them? What gives us our ability or our probable cause, so that they're all violations. They're all legislative, written penal code violations.
Right.
As opposed to saying, first of all, a naked guy playing dodgeball with cars, let's really look at that.
Like, this is a sick person.
This is a sick person.
Right.
Whether it be he's under the influence, whether he's being mental health crisis, or both.
Right. If somebody has a stroke on the corner, you're not going to give them a penal code violation for obstructing traffic, right?
Absolutely.
You're probably going to get them medical treatment.
If somebody has dementia and is walking in the middle of the street, But you mentioned autism and dementia. We've been having some horrific encounters with law enforcement with people with autism and dementia, and they're violent, or they threaten me. Really?
Right. There's a lack of, do you think there's just a severe lack of education and understanding of what's going on with people in law enforcement, or what is it?
I would say that is part of it, but I would say that what we're really lacking is empathy. Because if you don't, because I guarantee you that if I took a police officer, a deputy sheriff, whose son was autistic, whose brother was autistic, and they got to that call, they would see that and they would treat them differently.
Right.
Because they would recognize some things. So some of it is education, but some of it is also just, I don't care.
Well, how do you teach empathy?
I don't know if you teach it, but you hold accountability for it. And it may not be empathy, may not be the right word. Compassion, evaluation, assessing.
Well, I think part of the other problem that we see, right, is, as you mentioned, penal code violation. What other tools do law enforcement currently have to assess and support a person like that? Really, if there's a man naked playing dodgeball in the street and people can't get through, something has to happen, right?
Of course.
Right?
Yes.
But does the person deserve to be, arrested and charged? Man's not going to show up to court. He hasn't been medicated in 6 years. You know what I mean? He's living in a different universe. So how do we get to a place where the system has changed so much to work in an effective way, where it's like, okay, we assess this person and then we actually get them some support. So maybe same guy won't be released from jail after 4 or 5 days, which is usually what they do for, these nonviolent offenses. And then he's back on the same corner, butt naked, playing with the same dodgeball, doing the same thing, right?
Right. So I think there's a couple of things that we do. Yes, we got to go and get him out of the middle of the street. Right. So that may be a law enforcement response. But what if we had a co-located law enforcement response with a behavioral health technician, a clinician, somebody else in the car, what if we knew that, first of all, we don't roll up on that call with lights and sirens blazing, so that it creates this heightened level of agitation, aggravation. And what if we knew that, what if we just go there and talk to them, and we're not in such a rush to get them out of the street, that we can talk to them, at least to get them in the center median, So if we had, let's just say, a clinician or a BHT, right? BAT, am I saying the right?
BHT is a behavioral health technician.
Okay, so what if we had them there and can just get them in the center median while the peace officer, hey, okay, traffic, let's go, and then there's some communication that says, okay, we're ready to walk across the street. Okay, we could stop traffic. And we could do this calmly and take a little bit more time. But what if we could do that, again, with a co-located model, but then we could free up the other peace officers to go deal with the other crime
Right, like
stuff.
similar how police departments have peer support,
Yes.
right? Where it's other
Yes.
police officers supporting their peers.
Right.
Maybe there could be, something where there would be peer support for the community. Somebody who is either licensed or trained or has experience to support those in mental health crises, right?
And what if we could not take that person to jail, which we've already gone over, that cycle, 3 or 4 days,
Right.
5 days, 10 days. But what if we could take them to a treatment facility or somewhere where they're going to get the resources for the time that it's needed? Not until the DA looks at it, rejects the charges, and now the judge is saying, okay, hurry up and get him out. You can't hold him any longer.
Right.
Not until the public defender, creates some kind of deal, and so they're just in this incarcerated place
Right.
where oftentimes their condition is exasperated, far before it's treated, right? Because
Right.
just think about the processing.
Now they're
time.
traumatized, they're
Yes.
reactive. And the truth is for the very severe cases, right? Like the naked man in the middle of the street playing dodgeball. There could also be a scenario where maybe he is incarcerated and medicated for 14 days and then released to a treatment facility, right? In a severe case
That part-
like
that
where he
part
could
as well.
actually, be able to accept treatment. But who knows? I mean, you mentioned when we talked before, this show, that we spend $120,000 per person to incarcerate in Twin Towers, right?
Yeah.
Right?
And that's the
A
baseline,
year.
really. Yeah, that's the baseline, because the more medical treatment they need, it could be higher.
Right.
The more mental health resources, whatever they're.
So $120,000 to $150,000
Yeah.
per person. And you said you guys have approximately 13 to 14,000 people.
That's our daily.
in
Yep.
just one jail in LA County.
No,
right?
so that's our jail system.
Okay, got it,
Right,
got it.
right.
In our jail system in Los
Yes.
Angeles County. So 13 to 14,000 people. So I don't know what the math is, but 14,000 times approximately $120,000 per person.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money that we're spending, right?
Yes.
For a system that's just not working. So what would you propose we do to shift that?
So you are very well experienced in this industry. Let me ask you this. What would it cost you in one of your homes that you were talking about to give somebody these resources and services? And I know maybe a lot of times it's 90 days, but if you were to put it out, what is the cost?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the facility and the level of care, but if we're talking about on the low end, where I'd imagine a lot of facilities would be willing to, have a contracted rate maybe that was lower. Let's say it's $700 or $800 a day on the low end,
Okay.
right?
I mean,
That's
if you
for
were to
the-
look at it
that's-
for like a year, what would
Yeah,
you think?
that's more
Would
for an
we save
inpatient.
money?
That's probably from an inpatient standpoint. Let me do the math here. I'm going to pull it up. So let's say someone who's having a severe mental health crisis or is, addicted to drugs goes to a detox facility for 14 days, which is probably where they'd start, right? That would be approximately, let's say, 10,000 on the low end,
Okay,
right?
okay.
And then to continue, right, for 12 months, let's say, maybe it would be probably looking at around the same amount of money altogether, maybe 60 or 70,000 on the low end. Or if it was just transitional living with outpatient, you could probably negotiate contracts that were a little bit lower with facilities.
Well, let's go with the high end, or you said the low
Right.
end. Let's go with $70,000.
Right. Okay.
Let's say $70,000. So if you were to take 120 or 70 from 120, that's a $50,000 savings, right?
Right.
Now, let's just multiply $50,000 and let's just do 10% of 14,000. What do you come up with?
10% of 14,000.
Let's just say 1,400 times 50,000.
1,400. I'm not a mather.
Yeah, me neither.
Times 50,000,
It's like
you said?
$65 million or something like what is it?
70 million.
70 million. Okay, so we're talking about a very small percentage. We're talking about 10%.
Right.
Even if you did 5%, so 70, you're talking about $35 million savings, right? But they're getting the resources and services that are impactful, that are relevant, and they're working, right? So now we're going to save money. We're going to give people what they need, right? So that now, and hopefully we also include that with some skills, some training, because we're also working with organizations, or I'm working with organizations that will help give jobs, give people purpose, right?
Yeah.
So we're saving money, we're reducing recidivism, and it's not a 100%, you know what I mean? But we're gonna give them better resources and services. We're going to help them become productive members of society with purpose.
Right.
And then we're freeing up deputy sheriffs
To do their job.
to do their job.
For the people who
Yes, go
are
and deal.
evil and dangerous and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can argue against that. I think that's a win-win.
right.
And
And
so-
I mean, $70 million is a big number, but I mean, the money that we've been throwing at the homeless situation specifically is in the billions.
And we're being, and remember this, we're being very conservative, because here's what we have. If 60 to 65% of our population is dealing with mental health issues and you know, addiction and a combination of the two, I think we'll probably do a lot more than just 10%. You know, I think we'll do a lot more than just 10%. And there's just so many things that can come out of that are positive, and then you start building, such as yourself.
Right.
The work that you're doing now came out of your addiction.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Right. So now we're going to start having more people
That have purpose. Drive, and they, you know, I mean.
There's so many immeasurables, things that we won't even
100%.
measure, that this can be positive. And I really just think somebody just has to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It can be done. Yeah, there can be red tape, but there's also ways to get around red tape.
Right.
You know, and there's ways to minimize the bureaucracy to get the job done and move the ball forward. And then what we do is we create a system that's so successful and so great
That you can't ignore the numbers.
you can't ignore the numbers. Exactly.
Yeah, like I mean, I'm a big proponent for, you know, treatment centers, tracking outcomes, right? Because it's how we audit the work that we're doing and then see what's not working, right? And we know for a fact, based on the numbers, that the system that we have in Los Angeles County is not working. The numbers don't lie, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really refreshing to hear you looking at it from another perspective. I think you're probably going to ruffle a few feathers, right?
Of course, yeah.
Closing, you know, jails, reallocating funds, but the sheriff has the ability to do that, which I had no idea, right? To allocate that money and put it towards rehabilitation, as you mentioned.
Well, we do it in-house, and that's what we do in-house.
But you allocate, so you have access to these funds. You're able to, you know, have an influence or make the decision on where they're allocated towards, and naturally, it's being reallocated into the same system. Which has proven to be ineffective.
We set our budget, right, and our budget goes towards providing the services and resources that are needed. And
I had no idea that was the case. By the way.
well, yeah, you know, just. It's like anything else. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where if you want to figure out a way, and that's your goal, you will figure it out, right? If you want a way to not do it, you will figure out all the ways to defeat any idea that exists out there.
Right.
You know, and again, law enforcement, I love the profession, did it 32 years. But we are so resistant to change. And we don't change until it's forced upon us.
Right.
You know, so yes, we're going to get a lot of pushback. And a lot of that pushback is going to be internal, you know, because people are going to say, hey, well, why do you want to close the jail? Well, tell me why you want to keep it open. If we can find a way, and again, it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's going to take time. It's going to be, but we're going to get started right away.
Right.
You know, but if we can get started right away and start showing progress, and we can start depopulating our jails with the mental health, and I would think that the deputies would want that.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, let's be, why do they go into the profession?
In the grand scheme of things, but having worked with first responders who they themselves, you know, were struggling with addiction and substance use disorders, I think there's a point where the job makes you very jaded.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
You can become very cynical, curious. Do you ever ask some of the people, the first responders that you work with, what do they feel about now dealing with somebody that's dealing with, you know, addiction or mental health?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like what would be...
So I can't think, a lot of the people that I have developed close relationships with that are part of the first responder, space, the ones that are in recovery, have a lot of understanding and compassion, having struggled, and a lot of them become very active in nonprofits that support first responders. But I actually had a person I dated years and years ago who was a police officer when I was very young, like over a decade ago, and when we met, I was sober, but I had struggled since I was a kid with drug and alcoholism. And he, we were dating, and he was, not an addict or an alcoholic, good guy,
right.
Not your typical, egocentric. He was a really
nice guy.
Person. Yes, great person, and he. I started to struggle while we were in a relationship together, living together. I mean, I started using, and it was pretty severe. And he stuck with me for a while, and I went into treatment, and then I got out, and I kept going, and we ended up, breaking up naturally because he's like, I can't do this. But years later, we reconnected and were friendly again, and he'd moved on and had a family and kids, and I'd moved on, and my life was very different. And he told me, he was like, my experience being with you really informed my perspective and my treatment of people I was dealing with on the streets. Because at the time he was still, on the beat, and ultimately became a detective. But he was like, he had no real experience dealing with a person with addiction other than the people he had arrested.
Yes.
Really, because he didn't have alcoholism or addiction in his family. So his experience was, they're pieces of shit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Liars, cheaters, stealing again, catching them with drugs, all these things. And he said that his perspective really changed because he knew that I wasn't that, even though I was struggling with drugs and alcohol. And so I think just having a little bit of access to somebody who breaks the typical narrative can kind of open people's minds up quite a bit, or experiencing themselves. I can't count how many law enforcement officers would come into treatment at the first responder program I used to work at. Big, tough, I don't need help. And then, you would find them, those same people, sometimes the people who were referring people to us 2-3 years later would come in struggling as patients themselves.
Right.
And I don't think any of us, especially police officers, they're more likely to struggle with substance use disorder, PTSD, or anxiety, or severe depression and suicidality than any other jobs in this space. And so the same people that they're dealing with and they become so cynical towards are oftentimes they end up struggling with those same issues. They just look a little bit different.
Yes.
Maybe they're not homeless on the streets, but the issues are the same.
Yeah. No, they really are. And you just said it changed his perspective. And I think that it's so important. I mentioned, I used the term paradigm shifts for me, and that's what it is. You change somebody's perspective because he got to know you before, your struggles. Oftentimes when you're a peace officer, the person you come in contact with is already struggling.
Right.
And that's the first thing that you see.
You can see them no other way.
Right. And you see them no other way. And if that's your only exposure, which honestly, Glynis, takes me to this, the people that we're hiring.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And so everybody says training, which is so important, but also hiring. The system of law enforcement is looking for this elite kind of candidate. Stoic, but, great credit, education, never been in trouble, never had, we don't even want you to have a ticket.
Right.
This uber responsible person, this ultra, whatever we want to call them. And I think sometimes we're doing the profession a disservice because here's what we're taking those people.
Someone who has a little bit of experience.
Life experience. We're taking those people and we're telling them, go solve humanity's problems. But if you've never had a problem, you know what I mean? And you've never, and I'm not saying that we lower our standards because that's the first thing.
Well, I don't think it's lowering the standard. I mean, you used the example with your cousin, right? You have this lived experience with a close family member who has struggled severely with addiction. And so you bring that experience and that information into who you are, and it informs how you operate in the world and how you interact with those people, because maybe when you do see the naked man or woman in the middle of the street with the dodgeball, you don't just see, some crazy person.
Right.
You see
a
that
human
could be
being.
my cousin.
That
right?
part. Yes. That you just said it. And it goes so much deeper than that, because people, the first thing they'll say is you're lowering the standards. There's people that are disqualified because their brother went to prison or their dad was, this or that. And it's like, so we're attributing any kind of connection with them. But I'm going to be very frank and very honest with you. Some people are disqualified, others aren't.
Right.
Right. And so, the reality of it is this: it's so subjective, but we need the people that have some experiences. I do think that one of the things that we can do is pull from the people, even within our own agencies, who
have experience. I mean, the best peer support officers internally are the ones that are not just doing it to have it on the resume to get a promotion. They're the ones that have the experience. And you know who they are, having, been involved with these agencies. And I meet a team of 15 or 20 peer support people. Oftentimes we would do these trainings to some of these agencies, and there was usually 2 or 3 people raising their hand, and they were the ones asking questions, and they were the ones giving feedback because they had bought in and because they cared, right? And oftentimes I'd get calls from those same 2 or 3 people at 10, 11 p.m. at night on a Sunday when they're off duty, and another one of their officers is in crisis, right? And the other 13, 14, oftentimes it was just a means to an end. It was checking off a box. It was, and it matters. It matters who that first line of contact is.
It really does. Another epiphany for me was in 2016. I went to the FBI National Academy, and one of the classes I took was it was dealing with difficult employees, but it was a trick title, and really what it was dealing with employees suffering from substance abuse and addiction. And so the very first assignment was write a story or a paragraph about how substance abuse has impacted your life. And I'm like, hasn't really. And I had to really think about it. But everybody, it was about 40 people, everybody had to read their paragraph. It was just a paragraph. And so many people in that class, executives, pulled out their chip.
They were sober.
Yeah.
What is it, FBINA?
Yes, FBINA. Exactly.
My old colleagues, a lot of them do trainings for the
FBINA. So FBINA. And I said, look at this. Look at how many people that we have that have suffered with addiction on the job. And again, it's a vetting process. But what if there was somebody
who's been through it?
That's been through it. That's an applicant that's been sober for 10, 8, 9, 10 years.
Right.
They wouldn't get hired.
Right.
But we crossed the line, and this person just didn't, they were either hit it, or it manifested itself. Or it manifested itself after they got on the job. But we're still considering them as valuable employees, which they are. So again, I think our hiring process is has a big part in how we start moving this, how we start moving forward with this system that needs to be in place.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Eric. This has been a very thought-provoking conversation, and I appreciate you taking the time. Is there anything that you want to leave us with, something that's really impacted, your life, your perspective, and how you intend to move forward if you do get into offices, LA County?
When I get into office. We're going to say when I get into office. Yeah, I think what I could leave you with is just all of my experiences. Number one, being real, being a black man and here in LA, dealing with family members that I've seen go through things, as well as my experience in law enforcement, seeing it from both sides. I think it really gives me a 360-degree perspective from so many different angles. The racial profiling, the substance abuse, how do we how do we deal with things, and are we really looking at caring for our people, as well as knowing what that looks like doing the job. I think it really just, and it's near and dear to me. It's something that I'm serious about. I know we can do, and I think we'll create a better society. And the last thing I'll say is this: if we could do this in the LA County Sheriff's Department, the largest sheriff's department in the country, that's going to impact law enforcement throughout the state and throughout the country. And then we have to give everybody the model.
Right.
If we can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, we're a good test subject. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, and what's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't work. I mean, it's already not working. So here we are. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insight. And I hope you're able to make some of these changes that you're talking about. I think it's possible, and I think it's necessary.
We can do it. We will do it.
All right.
With your help. You gotta keep me grounded, and I need your expertise.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today on The Peak of Possibility with Eric Strong. If you enjoyed the episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can listen to the full episode on Spotify or YouTube. And we want to hear from you. So if you or somebody you know is struggling with substance use disorder, mental health, or alcoholism, please call, email us, or send us a direct message. We want to help. Thank you.